Hello and welcome back to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, and normally I would say, joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Mark Etheridge, but instead I am joined by my good friend and fill-in co-host, Aaron Fitt. He's going to join us and talk a little SEC baseball. We have dragged him out of his ACC bubble to come talk about the Southeastern Conference. So if there are any takes you don't like, SEC fans, like I have a feeling which direction they're going to be coming from. And we will hand out his personal cell phone number at the end of the show so you can text him the takes you didn't like. So that'll be a look forward to that at the end of the show. Looking forward to diving into everything that happened in week 10. But first, I have to remind you that this episode of Highway to Hoover and every episode of Highway to Hoover is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Get ready for a new season of fishing fun with Academy Sports and Outdoors and reel in the best gear at low prices every day. Plus, Academy offers easy ways to shop and save time, like free 1-hour in-store or curbside pickup on academy.com orders. Obviously, you're an avid outdoorsman, Aaron, and I know hunting in particular, but are you a fishing guy?
That's a negative, Coach. I do like to hike. I'm a big hiker.
Oh, okay. That's true. I can vouch for that. I've seen photographic evidence of that a number of times. I do like to fish, and catching fish is really only like 5% of why I like fishing. I just like a good sit, a good sit, a good ponder.
Not sitting. Sitting. We got to be on the move. Got to be winning. Yeah, I want something to win is the biggest thing. That's why I play a lot of golf, because I can, winners win, as you know.
Right. How does one win a hike?
It's a challenge. It really is. Sometimes my wife and I will be on a hike together, and it's whoever spots the most snakes is the winner that day. You got to adapt. You got to adapt.
Is it Copperhead season out on the trails yet?
I haven't seen one yet. That's for the best.
It's only a matter of time. Look for those Hershey kisses, folks. That's how you tell it's a Copperhead. Hershey's kisses. Danger kisses, if you will. Okay, let's talk SEC baseball here. We've got a little bit of a format tonight, but we're going to wait on that because I think we kind of have to start with Texas, Aaron. 16-2 in the league now, swept Auburn right after Auburn had swept LSU. I went into that weekend thinking, hey, if Texas is going to get got, it might be here with an Auburn team that's playing really well. Texas defends its home field, gets that sweep of Auburn. I have said a number of times that the most impressive thing about Texas for me is that it is not the most talented roster in the SEC. And yet it is playing like the best team in the SEC. It is the number one team in the country for a reason. I guess I'll just leave it open-ended for you. What has stood out to you about, in general, just about Texas so far this season?
Well, it's just the fact that, and I talked about this on the other show this morning as well, but I mean, they just win, just win, baby. I mean, I love the teams that just have that, that kind of DNA about them, that swagger, that little je ne sais quoi that makes a team play even above its. And this team has plenty of talent. I mean, obviously it does. I mean, we knew that coming into the year, but we wondered about the depth a little bit on the mound, right? I think is that fair to say heading into the season, and it's proven to be sufficient, and just like guys just get it done, and we saw an example of that in the series opener when Jared Spencer left his start early, and okay, here's Max Grubbs, Dylan Volantis, who's just been a stud all year long. Both those guys have been great, and they picked him up, and they weren't discouraged. They still found a way to win a low scoring, 3-2 duel there, and then with even having used those two bullets on Friday, I mean, they were fine the rest of the weekend. Volantis comes back again. I mean, we talk about how great that guy is. I'm sure you've talked about a lot on this show, but my goodness, I mean, for a true freshman to be as dominant as he's been, it's really, really loud. It's wild, but and how about our guy Kimball Schuessler? Big game in the series finale. They're going off. What do you have? A couple of grand slams? Is that right? I don't know. Eight RBIs. I know that went deep a couple times. I mean, it was. They feel like they're getting contributions from different guys at different times. But I mean, I like the way their lineup pieces fit together, Joe. I mean, there's a reason this team is 16-2 in the SEC. They do a lot of things really well. They execute well. They're clearly well coached. Tip your cap to that staff, and the players. I mean, they do what they're supposed to do, and they can beat you in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, that's the thing that stands out to me too. Is I think this is actually more of a, and you were right to say it. Plenty of talent on this team. Certainly not untalented, but there are more talented teams, at least to me, in the SEC. But Texas keeps winning, and I think it actually says more about their floor than it does their ceiling. Their ceiling's high too, but it's just like even when they don't play particularly well, they're still finding ways to win and reach kind of a baseline level of competency from week to week to allow them to continue to win games. And Schussler, I think, is a good call out too, because I think a hallmark of a team that is really well coached and really is playing well is one where, hey, you lose a guy in Max Ballou, you've had a couple of guys nicked up along the way, and you just have guys kind of step up, whether it's him or this weekend they had Jonah Williams, who is a safety on the football team and hadn't played much this year, like really talented guy. And he has a big weekend kind of out of nowhere. And that's, those can be one-offs, sure. But just the idea that Texas has this guy sitting around the bench and they're like, yeah, okay, we'll go ahead and give this guy a shot. And he's really taking advantage of the opportunity. I think that speaks volumes there. And I tend to be someone who tends to be a little bit conservative about calling out individual coaches for really improving a specific unit or what have you, because I just think relative layman like you and I, because we're not in the dugout, we're not in the building, it's hard to know how much is coaching, how much is talent, like what the pie chart is of that. I will say though, like, I think we've, in the words of Dave Wasserman, we've seen enough about Max Wiener as a pitching coach to know that that's part of what is happening here, where they really know who their guys are. Max Grubbs has gone from a solid, not dominant, not particularly like dazzling starting pitcher last year to a really important bullpen piece who controls the game when he's in there, right? And that's just one example. But they will be tested a little bit here if this Jared Spencer injury is a thing. And as of press time, I have not seen any additional information on that. Maybe by the time you listen to this, there will be. Jim Schlossnagle was starting to talk about second opinions, though, with the media. And anytime you start talking second opinions, that's when you start to get a little bit nervous. So we'll see. But for a team that, to your point, Aaron, was felt an arm or two shy at various points this year, although they kept winning, that will test them, because then it's going to be, okay, Luke Harrison maybe on Fridays. Maybe you full-time move Riojas into the rotation and just lock that in, and then you do a TBA after that.
I think you got to at that point, and we should talk about it, because I think it feels like a very real possibility that this Spencer thing is not going to go the way that it needs to go for Texas, which stinks. But I mean, how does that change your long-term opinion of Texas? I mean, listen, hand up, I already jumped off the bandwagon when they lost Ballou. And then I'm just like, I'm scrambling and, I'm dragging on the back of that bandwagon. And I'm trying to get back on. They won't let me on. They keep kicking me in the face.
Yeah. Right.
And so, but without Spencer, gosh, I mean, like, how long can they keep doing this with losing these All-America caliber guys? If he's really done, let's say, can they? I mean, I agree with you on Riojas. That I think have to be locked in as you just got to get a certain amount of innings from that guy, right? You just got to lock him in and give him stability in the rotation. But do you think they can cover it?
3 weeks ago, I would have said no. That feels like too much for this particular team. I mean, I was saying on radio in SEC markets, like, hey, I think this team is going to be a really good regular season team, and I think in the postseason that the pitching depth issues are going to crop up on them a little bit. But now I'm like, you know what? I think I was probably wrong. And I think this team is going to be able to weather it. Because part of it is just that at this point, it feels like it would be foolish to kind of doubt them given how well they're playing. I think the other piece of it is that sometimes I over-index, just to put my hand up, sometimes I over-index on depth on the mound when I think we've seen time and again in college baseball. Yes, there are moments when you have to find some depth, but for the most part, especially in the postseason, college baseball is a game of who are your dudes on the mound. Who do you have to throw game one? Who's your bullpen guy, your top bullpen guy who can come in and get 9 outs to close a close game, all that stuff. And they have those guys. Harrison's been great. They have Riojas and Volantis and Grubbs, and yeah, they'd love to have maybe 2 more guys, but I don't know, man. Like, you only got to win two games to win a super regional. And that's enough pitchers for 2 games if they pitch up to their potential. Regional's a little trickier, obviously, because you got to win 3. But if you go 3-0, like I don't know that that's going to be any sort of problem, and they're going to host. So if their 4 seed is soft, you could pitch off. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit there, but there was a time when I would be worried, but that time I think has passed. I think they will find a way to weather this storm. And on the Auburn side, real quick, you just got beat by a better team right now. I think what we saw against LSU is real. Those freshmen in the lineup have been such a boon for that group, because I thought coming into the season, if you'd made me guess, I'd say, okay, one of them, we're talking about Freilich and Rimbert and Terrell, one of them is going to be great. One of them is going to be a nice player, and then one of them is going to be more like a 2026 guy. Right. That felt like the average. And instead, all 3 of them have been mostly great. And so their lineup has just been so much deeper. I didn't see what Cade Fisher did over the weekend, but 2 weekends ago, he was really good and felt like he was in a good spot. Dutton has been in a good spot all year. So I like that group. I like their bullpen a lot too.
And I think, just speaking of the freshmen too, I mean, I think Andreas Alvarez did not have a good outing this weekend.
Right.
But he was good the week before, pretty good, 4 shutout innings against LSU. That'll play. I mean, that's still a guy that I'm bullish on. I really like his makeup a lot. One of the freshmen I spent some time with this year when I was down at Auburn, and really impressed me just with his maturity. He'll bounce back, and I hope that they kind of keep him. I like him in that Sunday role. I think better days are ahead for him. So that's another freshman that, there's going to be ups and downs with a freshman, especially on the mound in the SEC. But that's one that I think you'd need to have some patience with, because he's shown it, it's there, and he's going to have some more good days down the stretch. That's a key piece for him, though.
And don't look now, but Christian Chatterton's pitching really well in the midweek.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a scenario where we look up and he starts a game in a regional ahead of somebody that we might have expected, so that I think that's also on the table there. And it speaks to how much better the pitching is this year, because it feels like last year they would have kind of had to ride or die with Chatterton in the rotation all season, last year, because that was such an issue, just consistency on the mound week to week. So, all right. So let's get into our little format. I think that's going to take us through the bulk of this episode. So we had 4 series in particular that went not the way that I, at least, and I feel like most, would have predicted them to happen. And we're going to talk about the worry meter. So I'm going to read off 4 results here. And of the 4 teams favorites who lost, I'm kind of curious for which one you would wave the red flag most on, right? And you can also shout out the one that you are not at all worried about. The one that just, hey, let's as the coaches sometimes say, let's shred that box score and just move on. Arkansas lost their series at home to Texas A&M.
Not worried.
Oh, okay. Oh, we can do this one by one if you want. That's kind of a fun format. Ole Miss lost 2 out of 3 to South Carolina on the road in Columbia. Yeah, for those listening, there was a face there.
Don't love that, but not ready to panic. No.
Okay. Tennessee lost 2 of 3 at home to Kentucky.
It's similar. You don't love the Vols losing a little bit of their mystique, Joe, at home, right? I mean, at home, that is an eye opener to me. But I do think Kentucky's just good, and I think that it's just Vols are in one of those phases of the season, the ups and downs that are inevitable, and they're just in a little bit of a down cycle at the moment that I totally think they're going to bounce back from. I think maybe you'll, obviously, with AJ Russell getting healthier, and being built up week after week, it's going to make a huge difference for this team. I mean, if there's stock available in Tennessee right now, I mean, they've lost to 2 of the last 3 series. Like, if anyone wants to sell their volunteer stock, I'm in. Is the price low enough right now? Can I get a decent price on Tennessee? You might be able to. I mean, relative to what you would expect to get it at. I think there's small marginal gains to be made there for sure. I think it's a time to buy on Tennessee. Okay. But also, I mean, I know I'm not really. I'm derailing your exercise. That's okay. That's all right. Sell me some Kentucky stock too. I want to buy that too. I know I'm buying high on Kentucky, but they've made me a believer. I just think it's one of those places right now where they've got belief, and again, it's not the most talented roster in the SEC, but they've done a good job. It's a well constructed roster, and the older guys that they brought in are winners, and that's at this point clearly a regional team, and a team that could once again make noise in a regional. Like, I feel like if that team waltzes in as a 2 seed somewhere and I'm hosting, I don't love that. I don't love
Yeah.
that because they just feel like they don't give a crap and they're going to, show up and fight you tooth and nail and they might just, walk out of there with a regional championship. So I can see that happening again.
Yeah, I'm with you. And while we're paused here, I'll throw a couple things in here too. I think we need to, in the big picture with Kentucky, the reality is, I don't think he'd mind me saying this. They went into the season 2 years ago in a situation where if they didn't make the postseason, Nick Mingione was probably not going to be their head coach anymore. And they make a super, and then last year they get to Omaha. But if you even zoom out further than that, here's the reality. In 2017, they get to a super. And had they not played Louisville, when it was really rolling, maybe that goes differently. But 2018, okay, they missed the postseason, but there's an argument to be made they should have been in. And at one point in the season, they were number 1 in the country.
Yeah, very talented.
2019 was not good. Okay, that one, fine. Then you get COVID, the COVID season. And then in, 21 and 22, they were a couple wins away from being in the postseason. And we're talking about Kentucky baseball here. So let's understand the context. They were 1 or 2 wins away in both of those seasons from being in the postseason. And then they get a super and the CWS. And this year they're tracking to be in the postseason again. Like other programs might laugh at that or scoff at that. Like, and I get it. Like the history isn't what it is at a lot of other places, but that's a pretty good run. And I think we do need to kind of like in all of that time to have precisely one season where the team just flat out wasn't good at all, like is pretty impressive when you consider the history of Kentucky baseball. So we shouldn't lose that bigger picture piece. My thing on Tennessee too is it reminds me a little bit. I'm a tennis guy. And so the tennis fans here might connect with this metaphor, or this example. But it's a little, you talk about the mystique. And I think that is a thing. Tennessee has had a mystique to them and especially playing in Knoxville. And I'm not saying that's gone because of one series loss. I don't think that's the case, but oftentimes you don't see it when that facade cracks. And the tennis example I would use is that Roger Federer was unbeatable until someone in the rank and file in tennis beat him. And then everyone else in the locker room at whatever event kind of went, well, I've beat that guy who just beat Roger Federer. That means I could probably beat him too. And all of a sudden, you don't see him as Roger Federer, greatest tennis player of all time. You see him as just another guy on the tennis tour. And
he bleeds, Joe. He bleeds.
That's right. The same thing happened with Rafael Nadal. The same thing is currently happening with Novak Djokovic. Like this is just a part of the cycle of sport like that. And so we'll have to see, but the mystique is a real thing and Tennessee has had it. And does Kentucky winning the series, and oh, by the way, winning the way they did, where teams that don't even really steal bases might start to consider, hey, maybe we need to steal some bases here, because Kentucky, especially with Marcus Phillips on the mound, it just cannot control the running game. A single against Marcus Phillips might as well be a double if you're a speedy runner. That's a tough way to live. So anyway, we'll move on. But I think that the mystique point really connected with me because I do think there could potentially be something there.
And especially since, and I'm not certainly not jumping off this Tennessee team.
Agreed. Same here. Let's be clear about that. Yeah.
Yes. But like none of that stuff ever lasts especially in college baseball, but in sports, anywhere. I mean, even the mighty New England Patriots dynasty eventually crumbled, Joe, after a couple decades. You're not going to see a college baseball pro dynasty last for 20 years like the New England Patriots. But you might not even see it last 3 years a lot of times. Like it's just hard because of just the nature of this stuff with your roster transitions. You don't have a franchise quarterback you can build around for 2 decades. It's like it's stuff is inherently ephemeral, right? I mean, it's just you're not going to be able to maintain that mystique for a long period of time. Eventually it's going to crack, and that's just a new mystique team is going to rise up, and that just happens. And so right now we'll see how long Tennessee can ride this incredible, this run that they're on, this 4-year, whatever it is, just an insane dominance and the intimidation that they've built. It's special, but it won't last forever. Somebody else is going to be the hot kid on the block before too long. And we'll see how Tennessee kind of adjusts the longer that staff is together. And, and it's certainly right now they're, as we've talked about, one of the best programs in the country. And they've shot from outside the top 100 programs, 6 years ago to number 2 right now, behind only LSU in our latest updates. So like they got all this momentum, and they're not going away anytime soon. But I'm fascinated to see how the next few years shake out for this program as people kind of get more acclimated to them being up there.
Yeah, it's a good call. The last series, of course, was Georgia getting swept by Vanderbilt on the road in Nashville. That's our last worry meter team here. What you got there?
It just feels like last year a little bit to me, where Georgia feels unstoppable at home and quite stoppable on the road. Is that right, Joe? I mean, is that
yeah?
right?
I mean, I think that's part of it. I think they're also. I think teams. Well, look, here's the other thing too. Like Charlie Condon and Corey Collins were generational players in that program. Yeah. Now we only saw it for 1 year with Collins because of the injuries and what have you. But Condon was a generational player for a couple of years at Georgia, and so I think that's also an element here that I probably underestimated the impact of going into the season. So I think that's part of it here. I also do kind of think that Vanderbilt may have unlocked a little bit of something in terms of the way they got. Shout out to our friend Aria Gerson. She texted me about this. Like they got Georgia out in the strike zone. And if you have a pitching staff that can get outs in the strike zone, I think Georgia is a like, let's hunt for a pitch we can drive, for a pitch we want. Let's lay off everything that's not that. That's kind of their MO offensively. And so if you're a team that can get outs in the strike zone, I do think that maybe that's the ticket there. Now, not every team can do that. Vanderbilt's got a good pitching staff, so there's that. But you're right. I mean, they're 6-7 away from home. So your larger point is right on about Georgia.
They've been swept, 2 of the last 3 weekends, and both on the road. And in between, they took down, Arkansas, who was number 1 in the country at the time, 2 out of 3 at home. And so I don't know. It just it feels like the last 2 years it's been kind of an exaggerated, and I know that's like that for everybody. Everybody's better at home than on the road, but it just feels like that's particularly dramatic with Georgia. But you know what? Now they've got Oklahoma at home for 3. They've got 4 series left. 2 of them are at home, one against the Aggies, which is shaping up as a potentially fascinating series that last weekend. And they've got a road series at Missouri. And so I kind of like their chances to win 3 of the last 4 series. I think they're still number 1 in the RPI as we sit here today. Like they're going to be home for a regional, probably a super as well. And I think they're tough to beat at home. And so I still think they're an Omaha team. So no panic whatsoever on this one.
All right. Fair enough. My answer probably would be Georgia, just because I do wonder if Vanderbilt unlocked something this weekend. Yep. Maybe not. But that's kind of where I land on that. Moving along quickly here so we can get in and out of here today. But before we get to anything else, have to also mention one of our other sponsors, in Tecovas Boots. Whether it's the leather in your glove or your tailgating chairs, baseball people know that quality matters. That's why we love Tecovas Boots. Born in Texas, just like yours truly, handcrafted with over 200 meticulous steps and comfortable from day one, they're perfect for wherever the college baseball season takes you. From road trips to rivalry games, post-game celebrations, or just everyday wear, Tecovas Boots are made to go the distance. Find your perfect pair today at Tecovas. LSU rebounds with a series win over Alabama. I have to admit with LSU, the kind of back and forth nature of their season is a little confounding to me. But I think we saw that this is, if nothing else, LSU has the floor of a team that is going to take care of business against a team like Alabama that's reeling a little bit right now in terms of the offense has stagnated. They got a good start from Zane Adams, did Alabama. Riley Quick was good 2 weeks ago, but not this week. Like it just from week to week, I'm not sure what to make of Alabama on the mound. I felt like that was going to be something that was going to be a little more certain this year than it was last year, and that has not necessarily been the case. But LSU rebounds and takes care of business, winning a series against Alabama. I don't want to say there's really nothing new here, because that's maybe not quite fair, but it does just feel like, okay, not a great weekend against Auburn, but when push comes to shove, LSU is able to kind of fight off a full-on slide, which in this league is super important.
Yeah, and it's funny. because the way you put that was up and down or whatever when you look at LSU season. But I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of like zoom out for a second. You're like, hey, wait a minute, they're 34-7 and they're 12-6 in the SEC, and it's like nobody's going to go undefeated, in baseball. And so, like, yeah, they had a bad week last week, but I don't know. Like overall, like they haven't had a lot of dips. I mean, they've been pretty consistently excellent, and the same's true for Tennessee that we were just talking about. Really, I mean, they've lost 2 series, but is it just 2 series for Tennessee? I think so. But LSU's lost 2 series, on the road at Texas, and they got swept at Auburn, and hashtag that's baseball. I don't know. Their bats went cold last week. They still pitched okay. And they bounced back this week. Their bats look better. I love the composition of their roster. For me, if I have to pick one team right now in the SEC that I think is going to win the national championship, you got one team you can bet on, Joe, right now. For me, it's LSU. I still believe that. That's the team that I like them the best. I'm curious where you come down on that. To put you on the spot, you can think about it if you want.
No, I've been pretty I still think it's Arkansas. Like I'm kind of on the Runes train on this. Actually, I just think their balance is just so impressive. But LSU is a totally defensible choice as well.
No, I forgot about Arkansas. I was thinking about some other teams. Arkansas and LSU are my 2 favorite teams in the SEC this year. But it's and Tennessee's right there too. I mean, Texas is right there too, obviously. But the Spencer thing potentially makes me nervous about them. The elite teams here are obvious, but LSU's right there with any of them for me. Really, really like their team.
To wrap up here, I think there's an interesting debate to be had. So to peg it to this weekend, Mississippi State loses that series to Florida, which puts them like in a little bit of peril in terms of looking at the postseason. Oklahoma just beats the bejesus out of Missouri 3 times on the road, and I was there for a couple of those games. And I will say about Oklahoma, like Kyson is every bit as impressive as people have imagined, and Mizzou actually did a decent job against him, but it was low stakes because Oklahoma had a huge lead for that entire game, basically. But what I like about their lineup is it is one of those lineups where you could put the 9 names in a hat, shake it up, and then pour it out, and then just whatever order they're in is probably fine. Because they're not a lineup that needs one guy to be the centerpiece. Like they kind of take turns, being the guy. So I think that's they don't have the offensive ceiling of some of these other teams in the conference, but they do feel a little bit slump proof in terms of, their 9 guy on a given day is probably as dangerous as their leadoff guy on a given day. Now there are degrees of that for sure, but they just do have like a lineup balance that I think serves them well. So you can comment on that, but also my bigger picture thought here is that if you're in the committee room, like what do you do with teams that 3 of their wins came against Missouri versus teams that didn't? Like, I don't know that I want to give the committee enough credit for being able to really dive into it to that degree of detail. Like it just kind of feels like they're going to treat all SEC teams equal when in terms of conference record, which as we know, and Mark on the Nerdcast, pounds this point rightfully so just about every week of not every conference schedule is the same in this world of 16 team leagues. But anyway, if you were kind of working through this as a committee member, like how would you give that any weight? Like the Mizzou of it all? What kind of is your take there? Because I bring it up too, because Mississippi State still has Mizzou on the schedule. So if Mississippi State's sitting at 13 wins, but 3 of them, 13 league wins, but 3 of them are Mizzou, right? Like, does that hurt them? Does it not get seen as the same 13 as someone else? RPI is going to matter. I get that. But anyway, I'm just going to throw that at you and you go where you want.
Yeah. So this is obviously a fascinating issue in the super conference era. Now that we have 3 leagues now that have 16 teams in them, at least 16 teams in them. I mean, it's, how do you treat these inherently unbiased, more unbalanced schedules than they used to be? Even that was always a little bit of an issue, but now you've got even more so. You can have, major differences in your strength schedule within your conference. And so it kind of feels like if you're going to be looking at, and we've maybe gotten lazy over the years because of precedent and say, oh, well, you get to 13 wins as an SEC team, you usually get in or whatever. We've kind of set these benchmarks based on historical precedent, how teams are seeded or who hosts. I mean, based on how they do in conference. And I don't think we can necessarily do that anymore. I think you kind of have to look also at, if you're going to use your conference record, you also have to look at conference strength of schedule. I think it needs to be a factor, and maybe you play Missouri, but you also played the 5 best teams in the league. It could be a wash still, I mean, you don't necessarily just throw out the 3 wins against Missouri. Yeah. But like, I do think that the overall strength of schedule within your conference should matter in these super conferences. Or maybe you just fall back on the tools you already have and say, hey, well, it's already baked into the RPI. Right. I mean, your strength of schedule is baked into that. And maybe the committee just winds up using that tool more, or the DSR more. If when we think the DSR is coming as a tool that the committee is going to use, maybe, as soon as 2026, I think there's a very real possibility that that's the case. And, so maybe you lean more on those tools and just less on conference standings than we did in the past. I think maybe that's the thing that makes the most sense, Joe.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I guess my big picture thing is, and I think you'd agree, is just I would urge the committee, if you're listening, and I know some of the committee members do, to really take a hard look at the individual conference strength of schedule. Not all conference schedules, especially in this era, are going to be anywhere close to the same. I think about Iowa. We talked about on the main podcast, Iowa hasn't played a West Coast Big Ten team yet. And the record for West Coast Big Ten teams against the traditional Big Ten teams is really gaudy. Now they will. They've got Oregon last weekend of the season, but I don't think they play UCLA or USC or Washington even. So or maybe they might play Washington, but regardless, they're not going to see all of them. Okay, yeah, they're not going to see all of them, and UCLA might be the best of the bunch, right? They did just lose that series to Oregon, but regardless, that's something you're going to have to take a look at from a committee standpoint. Never more now so than ever, right? I don't know that any of the really top conferences, including Sun Belt and CUSA, stuff like that, the good major leagues, nobody's playing round robins anymore. Those are at least at the high level, so that's just, you're going to have to take a look at it. And I just wonder how much they will. So I don't want to be cynical. I try not to be, but I do worry a little bit that that's going to not be done as rigorously as I would like. So.
Well, you know me, Joe, I try to be as cynical as possible.
That's true. Yeah, we're good. We're good balanced that way.
Yeah. So I'm not super optimistic on this one.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. We will see in enough time. Don't look now, but we are about 5 weeks away from Selection Monday. So it is breathing down our neck all of the sudden. That's a show, Aaron. Thank you for pinch hitting here for Mark. I thought you did a really nice job. You saw a lot of pitches. I appreciate the way you're fouling things off and really fighting for us in the box.
That's really the key for me. Just stay alive. Just we're gonna work some deep counts because we're not hitting a lot of balls over the fence right now. But
that's right.
We're gonna compete. I'm hoping to make an SEC road trip. I think this weekend, Joe. I haven't finalized my plans, but I'm gonna try to, make a run down through Georgia and maybe I'll hit Mississippi State at Auburn. That's what I'm thinking at the moment. We'll see. Okay. TBD. Either that or I'll go to California. Who knows? Probably should figure that out. By the end of the day
depends on how much it rains here in North Carolina this week. You might need some sunshine like that. Maybe that's the deciding factor. But thank you for stepping in today. Appreciate it. Mark's got a little pulled hammy, so we're just being a little bit cautious with him. Right. So he'll be back in due time. Nothing serious there, but that is going to do it for this edition of Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. Thank you to our sponsors, Academy Sports and Outdoors and Tecovas Boots. Thank you one more time to Aaron Fitt for joining me today. And thank you, the listeners, for listening.